In his first public appearance since Election Day, Illinois Governor Pritzker says the state will continue as normal.
This comes as President-elect Donald Trump had a stronger showing in the land of Lincoln than his first two races. Illinois Capitol Bureau Chief Max Cotton explains.
Donald Trump will be our next president. He won the election, and we must all be willing to work together for the common good.
Speaking to the media for the first time since Donald Trump was elected for a second time, Governor Pritzker said Thursday morning, while he's surprised by the result, he's also ready.
No matter the storm that we face, Illinois will always strive to make you welcome and safe and protected.
Citing work he and the legislature did to expand abortion and LGBTQ rights, protect the environment, reaffirm labor rights, and more, the governor says Illinois is ready for whatever comes out of Washington.
Chaos, retribution, and disarray radiated from the White House the last time Donald Trump occupied it. Perhaps this time may be different. But if it isn't, Illinois will remain a place of stability and competent governance.
As for what's next, Pritzker says he's already discussed potential legislative options with his staff and talked to other Democratic governors about their plans. And while he did not provide specifics, he made it clear he will protect all Illinoisans.
To anyone who intends to come take away the freedom and opportunity and dignity of Illinoisans, you come for my people, you come through me.
Pritzker was also asked about his future plans, including whether he'll seek re-election in 2 years and/or potentially the White House in 2028. He says he loves his current job, but has nothing yet to say about his future. In Springfield, Max Cotton, WGEM News.
In response to Pritzker, the Illinois Republican Party released a statement which said in part, quote, J.B. Pritzker might as well have announced his 2028 campaign for the presidency in his deceptive media availability this morning.